Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard brought to you by Grasshopper Bank. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman, and I'm here today with Keith Wallace, who is founder of the Wine School of Philadelphia. Welcome to the podcast, Keith.
Lauren, it is great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Keith, you're involved in trademark litigation, and that's going to be our main focus here. But first, tell us, how did you come to start the Wine School of Philadelphia?
It was an accidental business, I gotta say. I ended up in Philadelphia largely because the places I was making wine were, one was in Italy, one was in California. I was pretty much tired of my life, even though everyone looks at me funny when I say, I'm just tired of it. Because, wine is my life, and I've actually been in food or wine for since I was 14 years old. So, but I started, and actually one of my my then friend and employer at the time asked me to run some wine classes for him, and I did, and I absolutely fell in love with this piece. You'd have no idea the difference between what a winemaker knows and what people believe they know is so vast that I realized I could spend my whole life teaching people about wine, and it'll never get boring. And I assure you, this is 25, 26 years on, and I have never been bored once for any day of my life.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, sometimes. Usually.
So you had been working for wineries in California?
Yeah. So I was a not. Let's just be honest. I'm not like a superstar winemaker, but a functionally good winemaker. And here, and also with one gig actually in Italy as well. And that's what I was doing. And
it does sound pretty good.
Oh, it's great. It's great. But there are things that that didn't really work for me, because for one thing, which I don't usually talk about, is that I have epilepsy, and even though it doesn't really come out all that often, one of the dumbest things you can do in life is to be in a job where you're required to be on ladders a lot of the time. Doing a punch down is when you're standing on a ladder, one story above a cement floor, is probably not the kind of job you really want. But at the time, I just, it was something I loved. I loved being that. I loved being a chef. And I loved those things more than when I was because what I was trained in and what I had been doing was I was a journalist. I worked for a small newspaper. I loved it, but I just really loved the activity, the adrenaline of being out, whether it's working in a restaurant behind the line, or actually working in a vineyard, or working in a winery. It just was much more kinetic. And I really, really, really got addicted to that adrenaline hit.
So how did you make the leap from that to starting a wine school?
Well, it was actually surprisingly, because it was actually just moving to Philadelphia changed everything for me. I was here just with my service dog and me, and it was just really remarkable. That connection of teaching, just having been asked to teaching a series of classes. I think I taught 10 classes. I absolutely fell in love with it. And from there, what I just did was I turned around. This is around 2001. I bought a domain name. I first bought winelust.com, and then I bought vinology.com, because I realized that if I called myself winelust.com, I would get a lot of unexpected attention. It was so I changed it, but to this day I still love the term wine lust. I thought it was just a funny, little play on words. I'm like, you see, it's wine lists, but wine lusts, but no one really. It was a bad, dumb joke and in fact, actually, my email address to this day is winelust.com. So go ahead.
So how did you open the school? I mean, did you just start by small with a class or two and build from there? Or did you come up with a business plan to build a full-fledged school?
So my business plan was largely just just one quick sketch out. And it was basically, what if I replicate what my father did? My father's a minister. And so what he would do, at church was just like mimeograph or photocopy pieces of paper, fold them together, and like put like the promotion of his church, his Baptist church, in local grocery stores. So I'm like, oh, I could do that. So what I did was I just photocopied like a piece of paper, folded together with the name of the school, Wine School of Philadelphia, with our classes and in our website, and I rented a small back room of a coffee shop in this little neighborhood called Manayunk in Philadelphia. It's people would argue it's not even part of Philadelphia, but it's definitely like just a nice little edge of Philly, right close to like some of the wealthiest neighborhoods outside of Philly. And so it's a great location. And for that, and yeah, that's how I did it. And I just put these little flyers out in every single coffee shop, every single winery, wine bar, wine shop that would have it. And yeah, and that's how I did it. I went step by step trying to get people in, and it was surprisingly hugely successful. I actually thought of it originally as just a side project, as something I loved. It was something fun to do. But then over time, and I mean over like the first year, it became so popular that I was I actually had to change venues. I had to start trying to find something more stable to run these classes so that we can run not just 1 or 2 a week, but like 3 or 4. So it became big fast. And
How big? Can you give us some sense of employees, revenues?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay. In the beginning, it was just the Keith show. And so in the beginning, so by 2000, 2003, 2004, it was still just me. But by 2006, we actually, I had, by that point, I had brought in a full-time admin, 2 full-time instructors, 1 other part-time instructor. And we had rented a shop. We converted a small little shop on this on Fairmount, which is the Fairmount neighborhood in Philadelphia, into the wine school. So we actually just took a shop, retrofitted it in as a wine school, and we're just And then and then within a year, we actually started renting out the building next door to it as well. And I rented a room, apartment right above the school because I was there all the time. And so at that point, we were making enough to satisfy having basically 4 full-time employees. So pretty good, surprisingly, largely because there are no other wine schools at that time, and very few since, that actually had a full-time staff. So we were rocking and rolling.
Can you say how big the revenues eventually got?
Oh well, yeah. So let's just be real. This is a wine school, so like we're peaking out around somewhere around 600, 700 annually. So it's not like nobody who runs a business should think that a wine school is going to be where you're going to make your fortune. I just happen to be really lucky and caught a specific wave of need in the industry. But yeah, and from there though, but it is actually not exactly like a lucrative industry, but really amazing to be a part of.
And who were you teaching? Were you teaching people who wanted professional roles in the wine business, or were you teaching people who wanted to learn how to buy the right bottle in a wine store, or a little of everything?
Oh yeah, no, actually, so where it all starts is actually just teaching the public, largely because what I realized was that people got all their information from salespeople or things that were too salesy. Like they didn't actually give you honest, they just gave you prestige. And I'm like, and people were dying for that. So yeah, it was just like anybody who was curious about wine, but slowly but surely we ended up getting more and more people who were in the profession and wanted us to do more things. And what really started happening, this is around 2005, 2006. Yeah, we started running full semester long programs, all designed for the public, but using my knowledge in wine production in the wine industry so that you actually had a professional level programming, but geared to the consumer. But that said, we started getting a lot of notice from the industry as well, which was unexpected and really both wonderful and also had some long-lasting negative externalities that we'll get into as well.
All right. Well, let's start to get into that. You are involved in litigation with a competitor called PhillyWine. One word run together, I believe, PhillyWine. And they've actually accused you of trying to erase them from the internet. What's your version? What actually happened?
Oh, well, I know this. And if you look at the problem is you look at the record. This is not accurate in my opinion. Let me just say that in my opinion, this is so far from accurate. So the owners of PhillyWine, they bought a license from someone who retired to teach what are called WSET Wine and Spirit Education Trust classes, and they're an international nonprofit that offers license and programming for wine school. So you can buy a license. Now, we opted not to do that for some multiple reasons. Mostly because I did not like how they ran programs, and I also wanted something a little more substantial. I have some other ideas about how to run and manage wine education programming, so I didn't use them. So this these new owners, the
WSET, that refers to sort of industry guidelines on how winemaking should be taught.
No, actually, it's just more. It's actually for restaurants.
I see.
So, but what it is, it's called Wine and Spirit Education Trust. It's a UK nonprofit. What they do is they develop programming and tests for that you can license. So, if you were running a wine school, say in Chicago, you could actually license their information so that you would teach their books, their information, and then the WSET would actually give all your students exams and if they pass or not. So that's how that runs. So you have to run their programming, and it wasn't how I like to learn. It wasn't how I felt there was the most advantageous way to learn about things, because I didn't want to teach people in restaurants. I wanted to teach everybody. I wanted to bring knowledge, and so I could adapt it as well, because the world of wine, like anything, changes over time. So that's who they were, and that's who they are. Unfortunately, there has been, from we started, one of the reasons we starting offering more and more stuff is because the previous franchise owner and these folks, I just didn't think we were legitimate and didn't think we should exist because we were not part of WSET. And my argument always was, we belong because we're an independent voice, and the world is big enough for both, and I can prove that we are legitimate and we're worthy. And I've done so because we've been around for over 25 years now. Now, the problem was, unfortunately, that when the new owner of this license, they actually relocated to, they started renting a room about 3 blocks away from the Wine School of Philadelphia. We have our own building. We have, big signs in front of, we actually have our classroom. They rented a room 3 blocks away, and they started calling themselves PhillyWine School. So that was a problem for us for obvious reasons. Even though our official name is Wine School of Philadelphia, we've been known as PhillyWine School since at least 2007, 2005. Media had been calling us PhillyWine School since then, and publications. And so internally, we also use that same term. People know us interchangeably. And so when they started doing that, we made sure that our trademarks were all in order. And then, unfortunately, this other company they tried to take our stuff offline. They actually contacted a website and demanded that they remove our information, our classes. And so that's where it started, since we were trying desperately to not litigate this issue, but I actually failed on that completely. So this is what the whole issue is do we who has the right to use the term PhillyWine School? Is it us or is it them? That's really what the case is.
So for a long time, they had existed as PhillyWine, one word, and then you're saying they eventually, after they moved to within 3 blocks of you, they added the word school, started calling themselves PhillyWine School, a term that you had been using kind of informally for some time. And then you decided to trademark that term, PhillyWine School. Is that right?
Right. Well, and let me just be clear. We already owned the trademark. You don't have to go through the federal government to own, because we've been using it in business and being called that in the media since at least 2007. So yeah, so what we did was so my plan, this was my thought process, is if someone's using my name to confuse the marketplace, whether intentionally or not, my job is actually, whatever else, don't get into a lawsuit, because suing never makes anybody, it never solves anything. It's better to actually use different methods. So what I did was we formalized our trademark going through the federal government. They agreed to it. The federal government, the USPTO, challenged it. We proved it. They agreed that we are the PhillyWine School. And that was so that was just the intention was, in fact, actually just to solidify, prove that we actually, since they were seeming to challenge us, wanted to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that we actually deserve to be called PhillyWine School. And I should also note, here's the problem with everything that's going on. They were only known as PhillyWine LLC since about 2022. Before that, they never went by a specific name all the time. Like, officially, they were known as Neil Ewing Wine Services, and that's what they were known at through the Wine Spirits Education Trust. If you look at, that's what they were known as. Their website was phillywine.com. Sometimes they were called Philly WSET. Sometimes, so they went by multiple names, and they didn't have an official name, and they didn't even have like a Yelp page or until they started using our name, PhillyWine School, what I claim is ours. They didn't even have like a Google Maps, because they don't actually have any location. So it's just very messy on their end. We've always been known as these things, and they're claiming something that they really were never known as, in my opinion.
So this is a good point. I want to mention that, I certainly don't pretend to be a lawyer or a judge or any kind of expert in trademark law, intellectual property. You're not a lawyer either, are you, Keith?
Dude, I drink for a living. So I guess that's the only, so maybe that makes me a lawyer, because but many of my lawyer friends tell me that does make me a lawyer. But the only bar I've never passed a bar. No. Yes, I have passed a bar if it only serves Budweiser.
You're not going to find one of those in Philadelphia, I don't think.
Exactly. Yeah. No.
So I want to stress that, and my goal here is not necessarily. I mean, I know you have strong convictions here, but we're not going to prove here who's right or who's wrong or who should win the litigation. That's beyond the scope of what we can do in a podcast. I think most people would agree. But what I am interested in is, how this kind of dispute affects a small business, and what steps you've taken, what steps you might regret, how you're hoping this will play out, and hopefully be resolved to everyone's, somewhat satisfaction.
Exactly. And I dispute it. I think all law should be adjudicated through a podcast. Lauren, maybe yours. I mean, let's say right now, let's 21 hats, right? Let's do it. I think that is,
But before we move on,
okay.
In this context, I also want to mention that I did, in fact, reach out to the other side. to PhillyWine through their attorney in the litigation, and they responded that they believe they couldn't participate because the matter is in litigation. That is something that could be revisited if they hear this and decide they want to come back and share their side of it.
I would love that, because to be honest, so from a business perspective, I said this earlier, and I'm going to repeat this. no matter who you are, if you're in a small business, you don't want to be in the middle of a lawsuit ever. Like the goal is to never be in one because the only people who make money are the lawyers. It just, I mean, if you look at Reddit or anything, they always sue them. Suing is never a smart idea. I truly believe that every single issue can be discussed. And this is one of the problems is that I'm dealing with somebody who doesn't want to talk at all. And that has been consistent. So, things I've done directly.
Well, Keith, let me stop you there because somebody could look at the turn of events here and view it as you're taking a fairly aggressive approach. And I understand you didn't file a lawsuit and you were hoping not to get involved in litigation, but this kind of hinges on the fact that they did use the term PhillyWine. They later added the term PhillyWine School. But you had been operating officially as the Wine School of Philadelphia, and yet you trademarked PhillyWine School, which included PhillyWine, their name. Do you understand why some people might view that as an aggressive step?
Well, the funny thing is I actually made sure in our pleadings that we claimed not to own the term PhillyWine. So we made first of all, because
maybe I should point out here, and I don't know how this involves, how this affects trademark law, but their term PhillyWine is one word.
Correct.
Philly, wine run together. What you trademarked was Philly, one word, wine, second word, school, third word. Correct?
Exactly. So my goal, because there's always been, because they changed their name. In my opinion, they changed their name in 2022. They never really called themselves, PhillyWine School. They just called themselves, they didn't really have a name. They didn't, what they used consistently. It was Neil Ewing Wine Services. So this whole piece is kind of confusing, but what I always made sure is that we never, ever made sure that no one would confuse between the two. For one, our name, even though we were always known as Philly Wine School, I made sure that all of our marketing was Wine School of Philadelphia. I also, the problem is, and I'm going to blame you and every journalist called us Philly Wine School. And so that's how people used us and how they searched for us, how they looked for us was Philly Wine School. So even though I always fought against that term, it was still just like the Art Museum of Philadelphia is also the Philly Art Museum. Nobody questions that. They were always something else. They've changed their name multiple times, in my opinion. And I always made sure, we didn't contract the term Philly wine. We also, when we did our trademark, we made sure, because we had to, that we just said, look, we are not claiming Philly wine. We're not claiming wine school. We're not claiming any of that. We're just claiming Philly wine, Philly space wine space school is us.
Did you trademark the Wine School of Philadelphia as well?
No, not yet. But we will. We're in the process of doing that as well. We just haven't finished that paperwork.
Why did you do the other one first?
Oh, well, because we had somebody who moved 3 blocks away from us and started using our name. And we saw immediately people were starting to, the problem is that by doing that, they were siphoning our students, and people were starting to complain to us that they, what was this other school? Why were we all of a sudden 2 blocks away when they would Google us and they would show up and there was nothing there, or 3 blocks away. So we started getting complaints, and we also saw that we felt that this was a direct attack, that they were desperately moving 3 blocks away. And they also created even though they didn't have an actual address, they somehow claimed to have an address there. And so all of this felt very aggressive to us. And instead of suing them, because again, I had to do something. And outside of suing them, the most gentle way I thought of doing this was to show them that they really shouldn't be trying to attempt to use our good name to promote themselves. And doing that, and really, I felt like they were being very aggressive at that. And I wanted to do something subtle and a little less, rather than suing them, allowing, trademark rules to apply. The obvious thing is that you don't change your name. You don't make yourself sound like somebody who's just 3 blocks away. Yeah, you just don't do that. We always made sure, and there was always this divide. Philly W Set was always Philly W Set. Wine School was always Wine School. Like, we were known as Wine School. Even the sad thing is, even their owner, one of their owners, called Philly W Set, and called the Wine School the Wine School. So we were known these different names, and as soon as they opted to confound that, to actually change the standards that we ran by, like both of us run by businesses, we made sure that our names were different. But as soon as when the new owners came in, they changed their name and made everything much more confusing, and they started, calling them. So they moved to their location. They started using a name that was ours, or I claim as ours, and that they created confusion in the marketplace, and there didn't need to be one, because up at that point, everyone knew the difference. But the thing is, everyone knew the difference, and we were competing, and we had been winning and shown to be hugely successful for 20 years. And so, that's the real issue. And I'm sorry, that's a long-winded explanation.
No, I get it. You did say that you were trying to take subtle steps, but you also used the trademark once you got it to go to Instagram and get them to suspend your competitor's account. That may not look subtle to everyone.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not. Just remember though, we did nothing. We held on to it, and we did absolutely nothing at all. Zero. And we weren't going to do anything at all, kind of figuring out what to do.
I'm sorry, when you got the trademark and then you did nothing, is that what you're saying?
Exactly. We did zero. We made no offensive, no moves at all. Their owner, however, one of their owners actually went to a website where we post all of our classes, and they made a demand that they said they owned the name Philly Wine School, and that the website would have to take down all of our information, which they did. So we actually our name was, our stuff got taken down, and only at that point did I actually pull out our trademark and say, hey, we actually own this trademark. So please. And so what we did was, and we went through, because they were starting to do things like using the term Philly Wine School on multiple different places, including Instagram. So anytime where they used it, now let me be very clear. You can always change your name on Instagram. They didn't have to use the name Philly Wine School. As soon as we filed the complaint, they could have just changed it to something else and kept their Instagram account. But they didn't do that. They just kept calling themselves Philly Wine School. And so, yes, and the whole goal was to show that we were on the side of the law, that there are laws, that we were on the side of it. And then Facebook's, and they gave us a split ruling, by the way. They said, yes, the Instagram account, that is clearly, that's your trademark, but they allowed their Facebook account to remain. So yeah, we did do that, but they didn't have to take it down if they weren't using. They could have just changed their name, stop using the term Philly Wine School, which is our trademark. That's all. And because these things do take time, and they could have appealed it, they could have done anything, but they actually instead chose to go a different route.
You mentioned that one of the reasons you were motivated to do this was that you felt that you were losing business to them,
Yes.
And there was confusion in the marketplace. Obviously, this has ramped up since that time, and much more has happened. Do you feel that this litigation is a threat to your business success?
Actually, I don't think so. At first, of course, I'm in the middle of it. And I am dealing with, and so, I mean, just to folks understand, they didn't just hire a law firm. They hired one of the biggest IP law firms in the country and in the world. And, which I don't know how much they're paying, but I do know that they're typically $800 to $1,000 an hour law firm. And I know, and they have 3 lawyers, who are working in 3 different offices around America working on this, along with whoever. I don't know how many other people are working on this. So they have brought out the big guns. And so this is a little hard for a small company. So yeah, but the funny thing is, even though they're such a large, and they are, as I've been quoted as saying, is that, they brought a bazooka to a wine fight. But that is actually, and they've been able to get a lot, taken some damage. They also got there's an article written about it that just took their version straight up without actually, without even mentioning that they just copied and pasted from their accusations. And that hurt. That harmed us. It definitely harmed us. And there's definitely going to be some backlash because we have had people say, hey, this lawsuit and this article makes, I want my, I don't want to go to classes there. But at the same time, our core students, and mind you, we've been around for 20 years. And so that's, we are talking thousands upon thousands of students have all stood with us. And it's been absolutely amazing to watch that we're going to be hit. And I can tell you numbers. I'm sure that we're going to hit, you'll hit us by 25% or so this year and probably next.
A 25% reduction in
yeah, probably. Let's be honest.
Students' revenue.
Yeah, that's my projection right now is that we'll get hit by 25%, but that's a big difference than being than what they could possibly be facing as well. So the problem is that what they've done is they've brought this into the public eye and made it newsworthy rather than being a quiet discussion between us. Now, mind you, I've never even met one of the owners of the PhillyWine. I've never met him. I've tried to reach out through different channels to talk to him before everything started, before they really ramped up. But that didn't work. Now, the problem is being public, that this is a choice now. People are going to start seeing, either they're going to see us both as being super gross and that this whole thing is ugly, and and both businesses will go under. There's every chance of that happening. More than likely, though, if they're, the amount of money they're spending on this, they could just go bankrupt with the lawsuit itself. But the thing is that reputational damage, I'm not seeing it that much. I'm seeing a small hit, a significant hit, but small. But yeah, of course, everything about this is terrible. If you read the Reddit posts and the hate that we're getting from their partisans, all of our people we've asked to not say anything negative, but on their end they have unleashed their trolls and saying absolutely awful things online about us and contacting our students and doing really horrible things. But yeah, at the end of the day, though, my belief is that Philly likes the underdog. Philly loves the underdog. America doesn't like the idea of having a British overlords running anything here. And I just see that in the end of the day, I think that this is going to be that they're going to look at both of us, how we behave, what we've talked about, and they're going to see that we are actually that we're just decent people doing a decent job, running a decent school, and that want to do decent things in the world. And I think that's where we're going to come out at the end of the day. And I think we're going to end up in a better position. And also that our national programming, which is much smaller than WSET, it's the National Wine School. I think that's going to come out on top for its independence and and your ability to actually, not try to sue your competitors out of business. Because that's what this feels like. This feels very punitive.
Can you give us a sense of what the litigation is costing you?
Oh, absolutely. Now, so far, for the big, because they've actually asked for emergency injunctions, and they're because this is we're going after a big firm, and we have an amazing local team, absolutely amazing. But so far it's about $40,000 ish so far. A little, because I could tell you that because I just got the bill today. So yeah, that was my first thing in my morning on the train ride into my office was the But of course, I absolutely the lead attorney is absolutely just one of the absolutely amazing. Dilworth is lucky to have him, but shout out to him. But yeah, and
Does he know you're talking to me?
oh, absolutely. Oh yeah, no,
Because that's not the standard advice that business owners get from their lawyers when they're involved in litigation.
no, that's true. That's absolutely true. You just said as long as I say anything that's just on the public record, that it's fine because there's so much out there. But it's important to that because we're this is a David and Goliath situation. We're going up against a licensee of a multinational company. So, and mind you, it's the licensee of a large. So, and it's own, and it's run by somebody who's willing to spend, which seems, and this is just my conjecture. It seems.
Is it Goliath? I mean, the licensee isn't Goliath, is it? You're talking about an organization in the UK that's much bigger.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing: in the lawsuit, they use that set. What they do is they say WSET is they're using WSET as a cudgel, saying that we're illegitimate because we are not part of WSET. They consistently say things like
they're challenging your credentials.
Exactly. They're challenging us and what, our value. And which is the irony is because WSET actually specifically states, and this is one of the reasons why we aren't part of WSET, where we wanted to have another path, because WSET specifically states that they are not a part of any credentialing infrastructure in any country except for the UK. And so for my part, what I want to run a school that can offer programming and what I want to run is a non-university trade credential program that complies with state and federal laws that we can actually show. And so that's why we go through, because through Vermont is actually where the National Wine School is. And that's where, because we're allowed to exist there. The Vermont law allows us to do this. And so that's why, so we wanted to go a different route. But this is the problem. They're using WSET's name against us. And so therefore, and the fact is that, WSET they obviously know this is happening. I shouldn't say they obviously, I assume they know. And I assume that they could actually ask their licensee, because the licensee does have terms and ethics that they have to abide by. They could ask them to tone us down to settle it, but they have not. And also, we are dealing with somebody with very deep pockets. And in public postings from several people, or at least one person associated with them, is just they're gleeful that this franchise, this licensee, has deep pockets and are willing to spend the money. So they have stated that, and even though I don't know the individual in general, but his position at the, and obviously I'm not outing him, I'm not doxing him, even though they've done that to me on multiple occasions. I am not. He's a very affluent person, and he's obviously willing. He and the business partner is also affluent, and they're obviously willing to spend more money. And for me, it doesn't make business sense because what I project what they're spending is so much more money than they could ever make. Like, they'll be in debt. They'll never be able to make a profit on their company, probably for 5 to 10 years. I don't know that number, but that's my estimate as a fellow business owner.
Interesting. So looking back, Keith, what have you learned? I mean, if you had it all to do over again, would you do the same things?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, actually, the hard thing is that, of course, I'll always have doubts, because how do you stop something that this does feel like would another company that actually has no chance of recouping the funds actually sue you? That is unheard of. Dealing with an emotional, like, people who seem to be emotionally led, and honestly, this is a long-standing feud. They have, and most of their lawsuit identifies that there's people involved in the lawsuit who are associated with WSET or similar, and haven't wanted us to be successful. So maybe I should I have been more aggressive, and maybe I should have taken the fight to them? I don't think so. I don't think that's the way you run a wine business. I think we should be about bringing people together. I don't think I am. I have to believe that I've done the right thing and not going on the offensive. Try now. Should I? The one thing I probably should have done, I'll be honest, is that I probably should have reached out to them when they started doing this and saying, "Can you please stop?" But that would be like a letter, like a cease and desist letter from a lawyer, and I just was so I don't even know if that would make sense because when I say it out loud, I'm like, no, they would have just sued us earlier. They would just been like more litigation. So I don't know, honestly. What do you think, Lauren? What do you think I should have done differently? Because here's the problem of being in the soup right now. I'm not sure.
I don't feel as though I know the situation well enough to really answer that question. The question that does occur to me is you asked maybe you should have been more aggressive. I wonder what would have happened if you'd been less aggressive. Would you be in a better position today if you hadn't gone after the trademark, if you hadn't fought? I understand that you felt you were responding to their aggression, but suppose you hadn't. If you had stood on your reputation and emphasized the Wine School of Philadelphia as your name and trademark, would you be in a better place today?
I know, right? Honestly, that's a great question. If I didn't, so the question is, if I didn't respond to somebody who moved 3 blocks away from us and changed their name to sound remarkably like us, would I be in a better condition right now? I honestly don't know because my feeling is reading their what they were doing was that they were trying to co-opt our reputation, that they were trying to take what I've built as their own from that point. That's the problem I have with this. And if I didn't, my assumption would be that they would have kept on going and kept on going. They would have been known, then there would have been the Philly Wine School and the Wine School of Philadelphia. And so it means I've lost like half of what we're known for because there's so many articles written about the Philly Wine School, the Philly Wine School this, the Philly Wine School that I would have lost all of that back reference people were talking about. They would think that was them. So I think I would be in a worse place, if not right now, in 2-3 years from now, I would be in a much worse place. And I would have lost my distinctive branding, who we are. So I'm not sure. We would actually, the conversation.
Did you really consider that branding? Because it wasn't your official name.
No, but it's what everyone called us. That the problem is that's what everyone calls us. If you're in Philadelphia and you just say the Wine School, then it's us. So if there's anyone out there also calling themselves the Wine School, or calling them, especially if they call themselves the Philly Wine School, that is us. Like that's what we've been known for. And I'm literally for 20 years. So, and this is the same thing like with the art museum. And it's very clear when it's, somebody else's, like the Art Museum of Philadelphia. If somebody actually just rented a room 3 blocks away from the Art Museum of Philadelphia and started calling themselves the Philly Art Museum, everyone would realize that was somebody trying to pull something. That was not kosher, or at least it wasn't ethical. And just because they put the name Philly and art together doesn't fix that issue. This is my argument, is that as soon as you start doing that and you allow it to happen, then you by law can't protect it anymore. So under federal law, if I don't protect, like if I don't do like cease and desist, if I don't protect it, then I lose it. That's just how federal trademark works. And so in my mind, they were doing this so that they would delegitimize any claim I had to the trademark. And because you don't do that, like, we didn't start calling ourselves WSET Philly or anything else. We're not trying to be somebody else. We're just ourselves. And so that's my argument there. I don't find their arguments convincing. And I don't that, they didn't remember, they made a choice. They made all these choices and those choices were intentional and they had a reason they were doing it. And the question is why? Why do you have to change your name? They could have chosen anything. They could have been the Philly Wine Academy. They could have been anything else. They chose Wine School. which is what we have been known for in Philadelphia for 25 years here.
So you did make the choices you made. They made their choices. You are at this point now, which clearly is not helping anybody. I mean,
exactly.
As you started this conversation, litigation is never good for anybody. Would you be interested in settling at this point?
Oh, we have offered settlements so many times. We've formally and informally, through mutual friends, through separate contacts, formally, we have. Absolutely. We were the only thing we ever wanted was them not to, was for them not to encroach on our students. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. From the very beginning, like we didn't even ever want this. We've actually been working towards a settlement from when they started. And they started actually in January, but they have never, they have, of course. I mean, who wants this kind of lawsuit? It's self-defeating for everybody to have this going on. I mean, it's just, I would love to have it off. I have so many things that I could be doing. No, mind you, Lauren, I love the fact that this got me on to 21 Hats. You're like, look, you do something legitimately great. You're an old Philly guy, doing something, absolutely remarkable. So yeah, I mean, it's not worth the $40,000.
I'm sure that's the case.
However, I mean, I could be your, underwriter at this stage, and maybe that would have been a better use of my money. But, 21 Hats by the wine school.
I would have preferred that as
by
well.
the Philly Wine School, and you get sued. And no, I'm joking. Yeah, of course. No, but however, yeah.
Well, I said before, I'm not a lawyer. I'm no expert. I'm not a judge, but if I could play judge for a second, yes. It does seem like there ought to be a settlement available here. I mean, how do we split this baby? You're the wine school of Philadelphia. What could you live with? Their Philly wine. I mean, at this point, maybe you would accept. Are they Philly wine school? Could you live with that?
No, actually, because they can't. No, I mean, because they're not and they never were. That's actually how we've always been known. So that's the thing is,
but Philly Wine Academy, you might accept?
Oh, yeah. Or they could just go here. Okay, here's what my recommendations for them. They've always been known as WSET Philly. That has the brand of their global brand and where they're from. Wine and Education Trust, Wine and Spirits Education Trust, Philadelphia. Perfect. They can call themselves, WSET, or just call themselves Philly Wine. That's actually the name of their company is Philly Wine now. Call themselves Philly Wine. God bless them. Philly Wine WSET, whatever they want. Just my recommendation for everybody was like, let's just don't encroach on ours. Like, don't use Philly Wine School, and we won't either. Like, look, we're still known as Philly Wine School informally, but as long as nobody uses that term, no one's encroaching on our business, we don't care. Call yourselves Philly Wine. That's a great name. Because it's just, call yourself PhillyWine.com, even better, because that's your website. Everyone will know where you are. So yeah, and that's a great domain name. Like, use that. Draw a business that way. And the truth is, because you don't want, no one should be trying to co-opt another person's businesses, and we should be able to compete on our own merits. If the name should be separate enough that both of us compete on our own merits. So look, we can have a deal. Like we've always said, look, if you want us to never use the term Philly Wine School, we won't use it. But you can't either. And and let's just have that as the DMZ, so that everyone knows who's who, and they can make their choices based on the classes that they have, based on their academic structure, based on the people who are teaching. And, and to be honest, I will say this flat out, I think we win on that every single time. And I think that's why this is done. I cannot say that for a fact, but that's of course my own belief, because I run the Wine School of Philadelphia.
Keith, I'd love to keep in touch. And
oh God, yeah.
When this gets resolved, follow up and let people know where it ends up.
Lauren, I would love that. I really, really appreciate you.
Well, for everybody's sake, I hope that happens soon.
Yes. Yes.
And that you guys can get back, you and your competitor can get back to doing what you're supposed to be doing. Keith Wallace is founder of the Wine School of Philadelphia. Thanks for taking the time, Keith. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
And special thanks to our sponsor, Grasshopper Bank. Thanks for listening, everyone.